we are here, Agent 12 from the Cosmic Intelligence Agency. So thanks for joining me this morning. It is a great privilege to have Agent 50 joining us all the way from, where are you this time?
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica. Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Kaypacha. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Control.
And waiting. I'm telling you, it's the weirdest webinar you've been on. Well, it's going to get weirder. And Agent 32, Sol, how are you? Thanks for being here. Sol Jonassen from...
Yeah, well, today I'm Kaypacha, actually. Evidently, according to this webinar, I'm Agent 50, but that's just
We've got
an
two
undercover.
Agent 50s.
We're undercover today.
So how interesting how things happen here, hey? So tell us a little bit we're going to be talking about the equinox today. So the equinox, astrologically, of course, tells us, the flavour of the next 3 months. So we're going to be looking at the key points of what shifts and changes we have coming up during this next 3 months. So if we get through it all, we're going to get through parts of it all. And of course, for all of us, Kaypacha, Sol, we all have our own kind of more intensive work. Kaypacha through New Paradigm Astrology, Sol also with the Dream Team, CIA with the membership, where we go into all of this in a lot more detail. So we're not here to answer your personal, let's say, stories, because someone did message me before. Can you talk about what it means for the nodes to go into my 5th house? We're not going to do that. We're going to give you an overall view. So as all the three of us here are always encouraging, is that you learn the astrology yourself, okay? And you become your own guru to adapt the astrology to your life. So so we're giving the tasters of what to, let's say, look out for, in a sense, yeah? So why don't we start with the equinox chart, which is behind me, and I believe the right way around.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I've just got to put my earphones on, I realise, because for the recording it works better. Is something that just start with regarding the equinox? Like if you can see when that sun flare goes away from my screen at the back there, the key points of this equinox chart are, well, the closest aspect is Chiron opposite the sun. Chiron at 0, and the sun at 0, Libra for the next few hours. So we're still in the equinox, technically, and Chiron's exactly opposite. What would that give the flavour of the 3 months ahead of Chiron opposite the sun?
Well, you asked. I think it's very fascinating. Ladies first. Okay, so I'll just pop in with my little thing here. It's extremely fascinating because it also makes an inconjunct to Uranus over in Taurus, and both of these planets will very soon move backwards into the signs that they were about to leave. They will just finish off a little process Chiron will go back to Pisces and Uranus will go back to Aries. So it's that feeling of something's been coming up to the surface to be finished off, a certain healing process that's coming up to the surface to be finished. So there are things still to be chewed on and things still to be seen and understood, patterns that emerge from our deep psyche. Chiron is this, especially in Aries, it's going to teach us how to find the strength to overcome everything that we perceive as problematic for our lives. Finding strength. This is what Aries is all about, having the courage and strength to move through whatever it is you feel is blocking your path. So it's definitely a sort of hero's journey, I was in this time during the equinox, I happened to see a movie on the hero's journey. It was just something that I randomly stumbled over. And the day after, I stumbled across other writings about the hero's journey. And the first one is, you know, the call to adventure. You're being called to find deeper meaning. And it's that one thing that they said. It's something is lost, something is forgotten. I'm trying to find that which is lost and forgotten in my own life. And what is it? We don't know until we travel the path. We don't know until we start walking. We don't know until we start exploring. So with this equinox chart, I think a lot of those who are listening and watching right now, they're probably somewhere on that path already, and meeting all their inner enemies, you might say, all the things, all the voices that says, no, you can't do this. You have to be better. You have to be stronger before you start. And nothing is perfect. I think Chiron is there to remind us that even in our imperfections, we can get a lot done. Nothing is perfect. So we work with what we have. We meet the people we have in our lives, and they will never be perfect. But there will be movement forward, of course, after moving a little bit inwards first, with all these retrogrades going on and still going on. So that's like the feeling I get. This is a chart for a whole season. Yeah. Any equinox chart is a chart for the whole season. So we're looking at a very healing period, especially with Venus going retrograde as well, which is so fundamental for our self-worth. Our self-worth. When we know our worth, we don't have to prove ourselves. Mm-hmm. It's only when we don't know our worth that we feel that constant urge to prove ourselves. When we know our worth, we can just relax and receive love. Yeah. It's easy, right?
Well, we're always easier. Getting updates, aren't we? We're always getting updates, and that's what the cosmos does. So Venus going retrograde will be soon after Chiron. Chiron moves back to Pisces on the 27th. So in the next, in a few days or so. And then the next stage, as Saul is talking about, that self-love and value that Venus is going for the deep dive with, or a readjustment in the retrograde. But we'll talk about that as we come. It says live on Facebook, but it's actually not streaming through, but we'll keep going. Kaypacha, what can you say about Chiron moving back to Pisces? Or till March, it's till March next year, isn't it?
Well, I've been thinking that these planets, they go forward, and particularly Chiron and Uranus changing signs. It's kind of like, I think, a mountaineer will go out and look at the mountain and then go back and get their gear. Or a contractor will look at the property where they're going to build a house, and then they'll go back and get their machines and their tools. Or, it's like, you kind of, so, Chiron went into Aries and kind of scoped out the scene a little bit, like what I want to be bringing over these next, 8 years. And now it's going back into Pisces. And, to me, the wounded healer, Chiron, is such a powerful, archetype to work with and deal with. And it has to do with this wound. And the wound of Aries is self. Who am I? It is an identity looking for myself and my power. And, it's like I am a shooting star. And when this shooting star is wounded, or I don't have a sense of purpose, of self, of what I really want, of my goals, I've got no solid, sense of this is me, and I stop here and you start there, right? It's this, so when that's wounded, there is a sense of I am powerless, I am weak, I am a doormat. Everybody else gets what they want first, and I'm just here to serve and give, and I'm a victim and a martyr, and I'm you know, and so this is what we're going to be dealing with. This is, you know, this is that masculine phallus charge. I am it, and I am on purpose. I am on task. So, you know, Chiron kind of came in here and, you know, threatened the masculine. We've been getting the Me Too thing. You know, we've been getting this powerful feminine energy coming up, challenging. Okay, and this is the masculine. We've all got a masculine. We've all got a feminine. So, you know, but what we have is, you know, and we can even look at it, I would say in some cases, this combines a little bit with Uranus and Taurus. This is, you know, the Taurus is this feminine Venus, Earth energy. Anyway, I don't want to get lost on that. We'll come to that later. But what I'm saying now is Chiron's going to go back and has to go back into Pisces, kind of back into spirit, back into the infinite, back to the meditation mat, you know, back to the pranayama. It's like, it's kind of scary out there. There's a battle going on. Maybe I'm going to go back. I'm going to regroup. I'm going to connect with, you know, my angels or extraterrestrials or ascended masters and really get my, you know, open the channels. And then it's going to go direct again next year. And, you know, and we're going to be coming back in again. And hopefully what I'm feeling is that we're going to come back with a greater spiritual, open-hearted understanding, not only of who we are, but of why we are here. And just a couple more words. I don't want to, you know, dominate, but, you know, it's, this is happening not in isolation, not by going out to the hillside or, you know, separating or, you know, hiding out. No, the sun is in Libra, Venus is in Scorpio, Jupiter is in Scorpio. It's actually happening a lot in, with, and through relationships. It's like relationships and intimacy is the cauldron where we are going to, that are going to help us find our truth, our purpose, our power, and our self. So to me, that's what this sun opposite Chiron, you know, is bringing with, bringing out that these next 3 months, okay, it's going to be really intense in the field of relationship, sexuality, finances, trusting, opening, exposing, merging, uniting. This is where we are going to be challenged to maintain our integrity without running away.
Yeah, right. Well, we've got no choice. We've got a deep dive now. Venus is going retrograde. So she goes retrograde on the 5th of October at 10 degrees of Scorpio. She makes what we call her star point, which is the middle of the cycle at 3 degrees of Scorpio, and then moves back to Libra to 25 degrees of Libra by November the 16th, where she stations direct. Now, we all get a kind of a strong sense of Venus in Scorpio. It's always anything is in Scorpio. We kind of go, uh-oh, you know, what's ahead, what's going on, what have we got to deal with? And I think for most of us, we're already feeling that like quite, you know, big time. We're already feeling that retrograde coming. It's not like it sort of comes from nowhere. We can sense it. We can feel it. I know I can in, you know, sort of various ways in life, and probably the both of you as well. So we look at those degrees, 10 degrees of Scorpio to 25 Libra, and what area in our chart that is going to be affecting. Now, when we look at Venus retrogrades, we always kind of look at the midpoint, the star point as we call it, to remind us of 4 year ago increments. So what was happening 4 years ago when that star point happened in Scorpio, not as a retrograde, but on the other side of the sun, so as an outer conjunction. And I always look at the 4 year points as significant, so that we've got a kind of a skip around from retrograde to outside, from retrograde to outside. Every 8 years, she'll come back to Scorpio retrograde, but every 4 years, she'll still make that star point on the outside. Now, it's a really interesting cycle to follow, and it very much relates to a very sort of fractal-like system in our astrology charts where the same pattern is repeating, but it's never the same. It's always got the ability to shift and change and move with us, right? So, Kaypacha, something I was thinking of earlier or last night was 4 years ago, you came here for the Chiron retreat to Australia, hey? So, I mean, I know that, well, that was Venus on the outside of, you know, her cycle, and now she sort of comes down to retrograde here. So everyone think about what was happening 4 years ago. And when Venus is at that part of her cycle, the 4 year ago cycle, so 2014 October, she was moving very fast. And I call that Venus on a mission. She goes behind the sun and she takes over. And she's actually disappeared from light for the longest time, like about 60 to 80 days, depending on where we are. In the retrograde, she actually only disappears for about 16 days. She's retrograde for 40 days and 40 nights. But from light, she's not gone that long. So in the shamanic traditions, it's the outer journey, when she goes out, like away from us, not down to earth, is her underworld journey. Although astrologers, we tend to use the underworld journey just when Venus is away from light at all. So this is kind of a quick dip into the underworld, all right? And then the big mission continues as she goes to the other side. So this is what a lot of, you know, astrologers are working with now, since it was discovered that, or discovered, I don't know how long it's been around really, but that the story of Inanna in the underworld is Venus going through 7 gates, 7 months to reach the underworld after what we call the maximum elongation as a morning star. And then she heads down because she gets lower in the sky, dimmer, and all that type of thing. So anyway, it's just something to keep in mind. I think this Scorpio retrograde of Venus coming down to earth is very underworldish, but I want us to just kind of remember what was happening 4 years ago for us as well. When we had a look at this cycle from the other point of view, so to speak. Does anything come up for you too in that way? Or anyone online, actually?
It's very interesting.
October of 2010.
The retrograde,
yeah, in 2010, it was a morning star. That was also, so it would be morning star now to morning star. 14 was the evening star. So we're
coming out for the evening star, yes, and coming out for the morning star, yes. So after retrograde, she comes out as the evening star, morning star, and after the outer conjunction as the evening star, correct? Yeah. So, yeah, so we're looking at 2010 and we're looking at 2014, and we're kind of tying it up to what we would be considering about that in our lives right now, in that same area of the chart, you know, about 10 degrees to 25 Libra. The Venus retrogrades move slightly backwards in the astrology chart, about 2 degrees every cycle. So it sort of hovers in the same place. So it's targeting, you know, a zone, you know, it's targeting that Scorpio zone. And so what's happening there? Any of you want to add something to your idea of this Venus retrograde coming up?
You mentioned the underworld, and what I've been working a lot with lately is that aspect of the feminine we call Persephone myth. As you can see with the 5th of October series, the Great Mother series, the dwarf planet that is in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, will be conjunct the Sun in Libra. Mm-hmm. So there's a double whammy here of something underworldish. I mean, Ceres is the mother of Persephone, or Proserpina, as she's called in the Roman mythology. And Persephone is abducted by Pluto. And he wants to take her as his bride. And it's a symbol of that fragmentation of the feminine, or that journey of the feminine into the underworld, and particularly so when she goes retrograde in Scorpio, because Scorpio is the underworld. So it's a very Persephone energy to this Venus retrograde cycle in particular. And especially, Kaypacha mentioned it, this next quarter of a year will be so much about relationships. We've had these two relationship planets, Mars and Venus, being thoroughly massaged by the retrograde. There's some consciousness growing inside of us, how we relate to people, and how that affects us. And the feminine is extremely sensitive, and the feminine in both men and women, of course, to suggestions. It's very, very sensitive to anything that happens in our relationships. We pick up on each other's energies, and it changes us. It's like we're being pulled into to Hades. We're being pulled into the underworld. And how we deal with the underworld when we are there is the big thing. That's the big challenge, because you always have two paths in life. You can go into destroying yourself, like, I just want to destroy this experience because it's so painful. I want to get out of it as quick as possible. Like, now I have a feeling of rejection, or now I felt a slightly hurt, or now I feel animosity. Now I feel I'm not wanted. I'm not feeling welcomed. Like, the feminine is always looking for love. It's looking to be loved. This is Venus. It's Aphrodite. It's her principle is beauty. Look at me. I'm loved. We also know from the myth she was quite vain. When she didn't get the proper kind of attention, she felt unloved, So it's, how people react on us is very, can change us a lot. It can change the way we express ourselves, for instance. We start measuring our behavior, and we're not supposed to do that. So that's part of the initiation of Persephone in the underworld. She's going through this massive transformation, these massive struggles with herself, symbolically, with all her emotions that are, flooding her system, with all her feelings, and she will, and how we transmute these energies while we are there has a lot to do with how we deal with relationships. Instead of going defensively out and just, attacking each other by pointing fingers and saying, you did this to me, and etc. We can say, when you do this to me, I feel like, oh, wow, it makes me feel like we start to own up to our own experiences and share how that really feels for us. And that's when Persephone turns into the queen of the underworld, because eventually she takes that, she merge with that underworld, and she says, okay, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to make the best of it. It's part of life to be here, actually. I cannot escape it. A relationship will be so painful for most of us. We get in touch with our own shadow material. Suddenly we are vulnerable again. And Scorpio is that sign of exposing yourself on those vulnerable, areas. That's why it's intimacy. It's intimacy. It's raw. It's not that it's not you showing up in your best outfit. No, it's you showing up crying and I went through all this, and it's that pure raw expression of how you really feel. And I feel now a lot of people are ready to come out of their from behind their masks, and we need so much this authentic relating. We need it so much on Earth. And in between, which is such a beautiful astrology, in between Mars retrograde and Venus retrograde, we had Mercury going retrograde. And right after Venus is done with her retrograde, Mercury goes retrograde again. So it's all about communication and how we communicate ourselves in relationships. Doesn't necessarily have to be with words. It can be in other ways too. It could be sexually communication, right? Intimate communication, hugging, just, body language, whatever it is. We have so many ways to express ourselves. So I'm super excited. I'm born with Venus retrograde for, I'm like an expert through experience. I've been through that shit. And 4 years ago, that was the disintegration of a very long relationship that sort of got wrapped up right now because he recently got married, actually. So that was like 3 or 4 days ago. So that was like a beautiful wrapping up this whole process that I actually started last time, Venus Scorpio in 4 years ago. Yeah, that's really cool.
So how relevant the 4 year thing is as well. And retrogrades can very much bring up the return of people into our lives, or you know, someone we haven't talked to for a while, go, where does that come from? You know, someone we've known, definitely. Kaypacha, what can you add to this Venus retrograde for us? Thanks, Sol.
Well,
we just keep moving, though.
well, I think it has a lot to do with this whole masculine-feminine relationship energy shift that is happening. It's been in this Aries Scorpio star that lasts for 100 years, basically, from 1926 to 2026. We've got like 2 more of these descents, in the sign of Scorpio. And these last 100 years has been Venus, the feminine, this star point, including Aries and Scorpio, to me is really symbolic of this whole Black Moon Lilith, Kali, Eris. The feminine is just kind of re-emerging, and she has, out of a patriarchy. If we look at the bigger 6,500 years of suppression, we have a lot of anger. We have a lot of, I don't want to say revenge, but there's a lot of power that the feminine is now, getting a grip on. And it's almost like she's had enough. Like Sol said, she wants connection. And what is in the way of connection? It's very interesting that she is squaring the moon's nodes 3 times instead of 1. She's squaring Mars in Aquarius. So we're having this whole T-square going on. She's like the skipped step in evolutionary astrology when these planets square the nodes. And then like Sol was saying, yeah, she got abducted. Almost the rape of, Persephone getting, pulled down by Pluto into the underworld. And to me, this is just, this Mars moving through Aquarius, the South Node through Aquarius, all this energy going on around technology, around, just swipe one way or swipe this way or that way for a relationship, for one-night stands, for instant gratification, for, no commitment, superficial sex, and just pleasure and hit and run. And, it's like the nature of intimacy, the nature of relationship, the nature of how we merge, unite, and connect alchemically and deeply and intimately is really going through a massive transition. And I think that part of that transition is just like we are now becoming awake and aware of it, what's really been suppressed for both men and women is sex by religion through the age of Pisces and all these different religions. So now it's almost like this emergence of a new toy. We have a new toy that we can bring out and play with in public. And so now it's just like this whole thing where everybody's kind of like, oh my God, I got this huge animal sexual nature, and what do I do with it? And then you got social media and the internet and the pornography and all this stuff going on out here, transgender switching and everything. So it's like all this, powerful, sexual, animal, instinctive, impulsive energy is emerging. And it's kind of like, I think it's overwhelming many people, and they're losing their identity, their Aries, their core, their self, by how many likes they get on Facebook or how many, Instagram, this, that, or the other thing. And the nice thing that I think is that the South Node moving through Aquarius is kind of brought up how fake and how phony and how stupid this internet, all this kind of, I mean, I love JP Sears. I don't know if you've seen him, but, just some of the jokes that are made, like, oh my God, how inane, how immature is, is all this emphasis on the social media. And I think, part of this, the nodes moving into Cancer, Capricorn, kind of, to me, signals that there's a process around this whole, technology, social media, extravaganza, that it's like, okay, that's another, energy now that's kind of thrown us off. And so we're getting, sexually liberated and technology liberated. And, it's like we're all liberated, and it's easy to get lost with license. And you're muted.
Yeah, for sure.
Can I just add something to what Kaypacha said there? Because it was about these sexual energies, which I think, it's energy. And we were talking a little bit, me and Kaypacha, we had like a little chit-chat about Lilith, Black Moon Lilith, the other day. And it is this powerful energy. And it's a little bit related to also that which Persephone meets inside of herself, what we meet inside of ourselves. These powerful energies that needs transmutation or needs actually guidance or direction. It needs leadership. And that's something that we need to understand as well. Like, where can we find that midpoint between suppression of our energies and between expression of our energies? How do we do that in a way that's good for us and good for our environment? And how do we do that in a responsible way? So I wanted to mention that, with this equinox charts, which is the chart for the entire coming 3 months, we also have Sun square Saturn, actually. And with the nodes also going into Capricorn, we will see a much higher focus on leadership, how we take leadership and control back into our own lives. We have a lot we can do with our own lives. We can't do everything, but we can do quite a lot with our own lives. Where do we want our relationships to go? And this Chiron going back into Pisces is definitely going to heal some of that victim mentality that is so difficult for all of us to deal with. I was talking to a friend the other day, and she says, like, we were talking about pity and pitying ourselves, like self-pity, which is a kind of distorted kind of love. And she was talking about somebody she has very close in her life, and she sees that this particular person is draining the energy away from himself due to self-pity. And that's, that's like, he feels sorry for himself, he's drained, there's like, I don't have any options. And I'm sure all of us have felt sorry for ourselves at least a couple of times during a lifetime. I know I have. And it's just the most draining energy there is, right? So I think, Chiron is going back to to Pisces, to fix that little bit inside of us. You can see it also globally with humanity. After Chiron moved into Aries, we suddenly have people, now we got to pick up all the garbage on the beaches. Now we got to find ways to clean the oceans. Like, we can do things with this earth. And I think that's the kind of thing we will, once we overcome that inertia, that feeling of like, I can't do nothing about my life, and we start confronting our own self-pity, which is bound to happen when Chiron goes back into Pisces, which has that dark side of, I can't do nothing, I'm overwhelmed, right? Which is, it's so easy, there's so much in life we have to take care of. But we can take care of that which is our true responsibility to take care of, and find proper leadership and guidance for our own energies. So I just wanted to add those into that.
And take lead again when it comes back to Aries, kind of.
Then
knowing what the mission will be, You know what you want to do now, so get some things sorted out so you can sort of get on with it next March when Chiron goes back to where it is, today. So we're kind of, it's retrograde now, it's going backwards. So we're kind of tapping into the things that we want to move forward with again, you know. Later.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we're going to have Uranus going back into Aries as well. So also, hang on, I've got the date here somewhere. Uranus going back November the 7th to March the 7th. So it's a really kind of quick dip again, 4 months back into Aries. Kaypacha, how do you see that little spell? Although it's quite a short one. Uranus back into Aries for a short time. It sort of conjures up, you know, the crazy that was Uranus in Aries for that 7 years, wasn't it? It was that time period where we saw astrology just go kind of viral, yeah, on social media, and everyone was an astrologer. Everyone had a head, you know, like blah, 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 talking out there. It's almost like, you know, I'm just thinking of it astrologically, but of course a lot of other things happened in the world, perhaps more personally. You know, what are we going to get from this dip back into Aries? What can we claim from there?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's this is just a time period where we are becoming and discovering new aspects and elements of ourselves. More stuff is coming up and getting thrown on the table for us to look at as potentials, as possibilities, so it's been like 52 card pickup where it's like, woo, look at all the possibilities. And now we can work with, this energy and that energy. And it was taboo before. And now we can look at it and talk about it and open it and blah, 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 blah. And so I think that there is this kind of like, and 2018 with Jupiter and Scorpio and everything has just been kind of like intense. It's like, oh, these eclipses were just like, whoa, overwhelmed too much. And but now I feel like it's going to, in 2019, it's just going to be this time period where it's like, we start to, tame the dragon, and we start harnessing the internet and, our sexual identities and new relationships. And it starts, to really kind of, be, like the horses pulling the Wells Fargo, wagon or something, it's like you harness all of that vital energy. And like Soul says, you can clean up the rivers, and we can, I mean, so many things I believe are going to be straightened up, cleared up, cleaned up. It's going to be really phenomenal. And I think that this Uranus is just going to be going into Taurus, opening up all kinds of new ways to, so many is unconditionally love ourselves, I think is where I see as the root of Taurus, as we are, and move into a positive new space of self-acceptance. So going back into Aries, is just more fuel, more fire, more dynamic energy. So Uranus is new and Aries is impulses. So it's almost like, I feel we are still going to get some new, it's like, oh yeah, I really want to do that. Oh, I really, I haven't, opened up that. I haven't, and also experiment. So it's experimenting in new ways of asserting ourselves in new ways. And then of course, looking to the house and the aspects that you have, in the early degrees of the fixed signs in particular, those are really going to be getting galvanized. I was looking at it. I mean, it's obviously if you are 21, 42, or 63 in those, those general years, okay, you're really getting this, Uranian energy of flipping the pancake, like, flipping who you thought you were and what you thought your life was about.
Yeah, right. So many things are changing relationship-wise, people, in a sense, changing their identities and getting more confident to do that in so many ways as well. So yeah, more of that ahead for sure. Well, let's move on because, you know, I don't want to keep you all forever. Cancer, Capricorn, nodes moving also around the same time as Uranus goes back into Aries. So 7th of November. It's the true node 7th of November and the mean node a bit later. But anyway, so Cancer, Capricorn, we've had one thing to know about the nodes is that they move. If we look at the mean node, just for counting purposes, it's a lot easier. The nodes move 1 degree every 18 days, one sign every 18 years, and one whole zodiac cycle every 18 years. So it's a good way to kind of know that from November, we've got till May 2020 for the nodes to be in Cancer, Capricorn. So it really kind of refocuses a certain area of your chart, of our charts, which is Cancer and Capricorn. Putting that, as Sol was mentioning, that leadership, their cardinal signs. We've got a bit of action of Chiron in Aries. It's the leadership that is being looked for in so many of us to take lead in so many parts of life and in our world. You know, like, you know, the others are perhaps leading the wrong way. So there's so many ways that we can lead as well. What would both of you like to say about Cancer Capricorn nodal shift in a nutshell? Because this is something, of course, we'll all talk about a lot more as the shift happens and in our own communities and all that type of thing. So again, just a kind of a bit of a bite-sized look at Cancer Capricorn nodes. So what would you like to add there?
Oh, well, it's the South Node again. So we have to decide, there's a difference between the South Node and the North Node to a very strong degree, That South Node is carrying something, it's a little cup that is filled up with something already. And now that it's going into a sign where we already have, we have Pluto there and we have Saturn there. And there's a little asteroid called Vesta there too for that particular time. And that sort of shows that it goes a little bit back to what Kaypacha mentioned a little bit earlier about the conditionings. Especially you have what I see is haunting people the most, because South Node is always about purification. It's always about purifying the archetype that is the South Node. And what is it that Capricorn is trying to decondition? Well, a lot of it is about shame. A lot of us are feeling not good enough, or we are feeling shamed that we are who we are. And being a leader in your own life doesn't necessarily mean that you are a CEO or that, you do a lot of stuff that, on the outside shows that you're a leader, but it shows that you have a certain direction in your own life. And if you want to have that, you have to be shame-free. You have to be able to say yes, and you have to be able to say no in a very clear and direct manner. And the interesting part is that Uranus is going back to Aries at that particular time, and it will continue to square the nodal axis. So it's always that trauma that comes in again with that placement, that square of Uranus to the nodal axis. We're going to have to deal with not just our personal traumas and whatever kept us from being the person that we could be potentially, but also the collective traumas, which is kind of our collective duty through individual effort to purify. Remember, every time you go through a healing, or every time you manage to break free from some limiting comfort zone that defines you, you are helping not just yourself, you're inspiring a lot of other people to do the same. And that's becoming healthy again. And that's the spiritual aspect of Capricorn, is alignment. And I like to see alignment as the chakras along the spine. Once you get in alignment with yourself, you become what we call truly powerful, not fake power. Fake power is like a hat you put on and suddenly the wind blows and it flies off. True power is integrity. True power is being able to say, yes, I will say yes to this, and I'm not ashamed. I will say no to this, and I'm not feeling ashamed. There's all this healing of the guilt and the shame that comes with this. And I think it's just a very important time for humanity in general. We will see this in politics, and we will see this happening in our communities, that we will question the leaders that we have to a greater degree. So I'm very psyched, because it's leading up to the next big presidential election, which is sort of setting a standard for the world in many ways. So I'm always positive, and then that's really something that I've survived on for a very long time. But I'm very positive that humanity is actually moving forward, and I'm very excited to see this development that is going on in so many people. And now that's the time for us to really free ourselves from that shame.
Thanks, Sol.
Yeah.
50, what do you got to say about that?
Well, the first thing that Jeffrey Green, one of my teachers of evolutionary astrology, the founder of evolutionary astrology, he brings in the transiting nodes. What you really want to be doing is, while that node is in Aquarius, that south node in Aquarius, you look to Uranus as your path of least resistance. And you look to the sun as the future, where you want to be putting your energy and focus. And when they change signs, now it's time to look, where is your Saturn and where is your moon? And it's time for us to really, I would say, put our time, energy, and attention more into our lunar self, our inner child, our feeling nature, and let go of, and this is, the south node going through Aquarius was, I think, let go of what you look like in the social media realm. Look, and groups and organizations, and, in some ways let go maybe a little bit of your dreams or your hopes in order to manifest, like here in Leo with this north node. Now they're going to be moving into, Capricorn, Cancer. And like Sol says, I think it's really going to be, a time of cleaning out the public office. It's going to be like, what's going to come under fire, okay, is the old rotten, trash that needs to get, taken out, and so that we can come into, this Cancer, again, I feel is just, coming into a new renewal, a rebirth, this positive, emotional sense of safety and security, and, really looking at how to best nurture each other and protect each other. It's just, there's, I don't know, my daughter is, she's getting her master's in psychotherapy, and in social psychology and social, and she's working at a homeless shelter. And it's in Northern California, anyway, somebody, one of the people in her homeless shelter, they just, poured gasoline all over this person, lit them on fire, and it was a hate crime against the homeless. And it's just phenomenal that we still have, really intensely horrendous acts against humanity, sex trade, and, people selling people. And there's just like some really crazy, I really feel like these nodes coming in, with the Venus going through Scorpio again. And, I really feel like it's a time of cleaning house, of the collective unconscious, of sweeping these cobwebs out of the attic, and just like, it's really this birth of, of a new age of open, awakened consciousness, first we become aware of the obscenity and the insanity of what's going on around us. And it's just this time period of, really seeing, okay, this is the best way to heal it, the best way to work with it, the best way to cleanse it or whatever. And yeah, so that's what I feel these nodes are going to be about and doing, is people learning how to care for each other in deeper, new ways.
So needed. And name, yeah. I mean, we've got homeless people in Melbourne, and it's, a first world country. Like you said, California, I mean, there's enough money around to be helping to deal with these issues, and what we can't, make some housing for these people, So yeah, it's pretty, there's a lot of work to do. So whichever way, as agents of change, we can get into and involved somehow. I suppose beyond ourselves as well, beyond our, just what we need, personally, like Sol was saying, Chiron in Pisces, going back there, we can all add something, add another responsibility somehow. We always say as counselors and people that work in this kind of field that we can always take on someone for free, right? We can always, if we're doing okay, we're going to actually do more with what we can do. And I think most of us do that in our, world here. But anyway, just have a think about that out there. So, I mean, Kaypacha, you've just kind of wrapped up exactly how these next few months will feel, the healing, the Venus retrograde, swooping down and sort of finding out where we can heal in order to then get on with the job, so to speak, in a better light, for the next 18 months. And then just a few days after, there's so many things happening in early November. The Nodal Shift, Uranus back into Aries, and Jupiter goes into Sagittarius. So that's almost like a do-do-do-do, yeah, that's right, a shining light that sort of leads the beacon in a way. But the thing we've got to remember about, just Jupiter at the end of Scorpio now, again tying up what Kaypacha says, move through the things that you haven't sort of done. Pisces, Chiron back in Pisces, gather up that sort of momentum, because Jupiter in Sagittarius is about really living what you truly believe. It's not hiding that out anymore. It's like, this is it. This is my truth. I'm living it strong. And Jupiter comes back to Sagittarius every 12 months. It's going to be, every 12 years, sorry. So it's going to be in Sagittarius till December the 3rd next year. So all of 2019 has this flavor of, get on with it. Go for it. Yeah, would you say? During these shifts, or the light at the end of the tunnel of this particular next few months maneuvering, I think.
Well, Jupiter is a very interesting combination, especially if you look at it from a medical point of view, a psychological point of view, an energy point of view, because Jupiter in Sagittarius is very optimistic. It's very expansive. It's, Jupiter is in its own sign. Saturn is in its own sign. So we are seeing some massive Jupiter-Saturn powers coming up against each other in many ways. And that's the definition of bipolar tendencies. Because, I believe we all belong to some sort of spectrum, right? We all can have these things. I'm not diagnosing nothing here. It's just that inside of us, we have that optimist that truly believes that, I have high expectations. I know this will work out. And then Saturn says, well, prove it. Right? And then that's the big challenge here, because, Jupiter is coming out of Scorpio, where it was healing so much of our emotional patterns, our emotional restrictions, what we felt we weren't, strong enough to deal with. And now it comes out of Scorpio going a little, yoo-hoo, I can do anything. I can walk on water, and I can run for president. I don't know. But then Saturn comes and says, well, you have to prove that, my sweet. You can't just say it, you have to prove it. And then you really get a beautiful process between, like, one day you might feel extremely optimistic, and the next day you're working like crazy to get it done, right? So it's really a very, these two planets are both about the king. the inner king, you know, that leader in us that says, well, it's up to me now. So let's see if I can take these beautiful ideas and create something great with it. And of course, that's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Saturn is, of course, that 1 step back. And then Jupiter 2 steps forward. And then, Saturn is 1 step back. But that's a good growth. That's like, then you're not relying only on luck, because that would be unsustainable. You know, one day that luck runs out, right? You have to also rely on your potential for magic. This is the esoteric energy, the spiritual energy of Capricorn is magic. Magic through understanding what we need. All the elements come together to create, right? We need a little bit of fire, which is the enthusiasm. With a little bit of, you know, water, which is that emotional investment. And we need earth to manifest, right? And then we need air. So we have some kind of mental direction in everything, what we're doing. And that's what's happening, the synthesis that's happening actually in Capricorn, which is the sign of the master, right? So it's really strong energies, I think, you know, and you know, well, I'm looking forward for Jupiter into Sagittarius, to be quite honest. But you can compare it to, you know, you put on weight and then you take off weight, and you put on weight and you take off weight, and you put on weight and you take off weight. You know, Saturn in Capricorn can be very strict with the diet, whereas Jupiter in Sagittarius is like, I want the cake and I want to eat it, you know, and 2 pieces, 3, 4. Maybe, you know, like there's no stopping it. So that could also be one of the physical manifestations of this actual transit, right? So, you know, I've always noticed when Jupiter is strong, yeah, well, anything grows, even the size of your butt, you know, and then when Saturn is strong, whoops, suddenly the butt disappears.
You need both, but yeah, if we keep expanding,
the butt metaphor
will explode. So yes, we need the expansion, contraction, balance.
Yes, expansion, contraction.
You know, life is boring and depressing and stuff. So we need those energies to expand, and then we need to come back into regroup in a sense. You know, to pull it back. Like, whoa, that's amazing, great. How do I deal with it? Anyway, over to you, 5-0.
Well, I of course am looking forward to it. I think that point of Scorpio into Sag is like the phoenix rising from the ashes. I think that this, this transit through 2018 has really pushed people to their limits. It's really opened up our eyes to a lot of, challenges. I mean, Scorpio in the 8th house is it's the sign and house of psychotherapy and counseling, and the need to go deep down beneath the surface and deal with your issues and your dragons and your greatest, deepest fears, and it is exhausting. I believe that Jupiter going into Sag is the phoenix rises from the ashes. We come into this new looking back over 2018. And why did I have to experience that? And why did I go through that? And it's like hindsight is 20/20. I think that a lot of what we are experiencing and have gone through, and the choices that we've made and how we end up, over these next couple of months, next year the pieces are going to fall into place, and we're going to go, okay, yes, that had to go and that had to stay, and there is that aspect, I think, that's happening. And then, of course, like Sol said, it's interesting, isn't it? Jupiter rules Sag, Saturn rules Capricorn, and Neptune rules Pisces. And we're going to have this Jupiter squaring Neptune. Okay, this is very strong Jupiter with very strong Neptune. And so the only thing that kind of like the fly in the ointment, of this whole, of this whole scene is I could see ideological warfare, if not religious warfare, but self-righteousness. and people going too far, over expanding, over exaggerating, over, wanting to, take over other countries, or, immigration and refugee stuff, just like too much movement, or just like too much, no boundaries, no laws, no rules. It's like, oh yeah, we made it, and now let's just, leap. So I think I'm probably going to be encouraging people, not to bite off more than they can chew next year, that it's going to be a great year, and we can start to feel optimistic again, or like things are changing or improving for the better, or we're clear about, this, that, or the other thing. But not to get too cocky or lazy, or, I don't know.
Good advice. Good advice. Yeah, you can see that. Oh my God, I was just thinking about the last time the nodes were in South Node Capricorn, September 11th happened. That was people taking control of what they wanted to. I mean, yeah, as you're saying, Jupiter will be in Sagittarius. Pluto is in Sagittarius then. I don't know, I don't want to scare us, but, it is very true what you say about, just like, this is what we want to do and we're going to go and do it. That's good for us as a personal way. But when the, nations and stuff are going to start doing that more and more, we've just really got to focus on the light of that, don't we? Like there's got to be, how's Costa Rica going? I mean, it is an alternative country. If we take a model in a sense that, like what would nations, I mean, when we talk about Cancer and Capricorn, it is about nations, isn't it? Because it's the core of what nation we belong to, and then how, Cancer and then the Capricorn, how that is established, in our societies. So, how do we build those better societies? We've got Jupiter and Saturn, and the 2020 whole, explosion or whatever happening in Capricorn that we're leading up to through 2019. So, the Capricorn, the societies that we've built, how much we want to change them, and where, where are we going with that? Some of it feels just so, are we getting anywhere? That's what I'm sort of asking about Costa Rica. Is there hope for us?
Well, it's funny because Costa Rica has just, we're dealing with a strike. Yeah, the government brought up, first of all, the budget went way into a deficit. So they are going to start taxing, and they're computerizing and getting all electrified, electronic receipts, like for everything, like a bottle of vitamins, you got to get the person's, info. I mean, so it's like doing this huge crimp. And so then there's this strike where, so many workers come out and they block the streets, and they, the gas stations don't get any oil. And I mean, it was just like, and there's no, the police don't stop them. And, it's costing the country like hundreds of thousands a day to, and they're just like, but there's no, like Nicaragua right next door, they strike or they rebel, and there's violent suppression of the people. And here it's like the opposite. It's like, okay, well, I guess we're just gonna, everybody puts up with, blocked roads and things not working anymore, but they're negotiating, and it looks like the strikers are, working with the government, and they're gonna ease back that tax package. And yeah, it's a great country here, man. There's, just no military and no, it's.
So they don't deal with things with violence, which is good.
No, yeah.
That's a bonus.
The police don't even have any guns. Like, they're just out there.
Wow. That's great.
Well, he was mentioning the military, and I would like to just add in a little bit about the military, because you have very militant energies with all that Saturn in Capricorn, the South Node in Capricorn, and then you have Homeland Security, which is the whole North Node in Cancer, which is all about feeling safe and being safe, and on a bigger global level or national level, it's each country's safety, as a country's identity. So, I've been following a little bit, I live in the middle of Europe, Norway. We're stuck between Europe and Russia, and Russia is our northern neighbors, and you have all that NATO going on, right? So you have a lot of tensions that potentially needs to be resolved in Europe and in the areas around, especially around Russia, Northern Europe, Ukraine, and places like that, which is, well, it's potentially, it's very explosive. It's kind of, there's there's all these undercurrents of hatred and old hatred that is coming forth. And you have that massive east-west problem. We have all these proxy wars going on Earth, right? And we have that, like, it's always the same thing. It's like Russia and then United States and whoever wants to be in their club. It's these kind of like, I have these people on my side, and you guys, you have those people on that side. So maybe we will see some shifts in power alliances. We will start seeing that, there are some shifts in the way that this global politics, also in relation to exactly the military, will start to change a little bit, because it's really not sustainable that we spend so much money on weapons, and we spend so much money on protecting ourselves from enemies that are just as strong as we are. What's the point? So we just, there's no, it's starting to become a little ridiculous, right? And that,
Cooperation. War is a
the whole cooperation thing is coming in with that South Node in Capricorn. We're going to see that, it's been the big talk of town for many, many years, since 2012, with the Uranus-Pluto squares. We've been having this, we know now what's the problem. We know this corruption, these problems with the system, and how that castrates people, and what it does especially to the masculine. We had this debate here again yesterday. I was talking to one of these women who were in this Viking community, and I mentioned to her that I've done some karmic studies around the charts of these, of people who are very involved in this particular environment. And what is it all about? Well, it's about coming back to that sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, that place where they had a concept in the Viking culture, which was the free man and the free woman, right? It holds a lot of responsibility for each individual, of course, but how we see today, how the system has been sort of trying to crunch that individual spark of fire inside of us through all these systems and all these ridiculous threats of war all the time. I think we will see a great opposing force towards that, where each individual is coming back to that sense of self-empowerment, so that we can actually, each individual gets empowered, so that our voices gets heard. At one point we just have to accept that we are the change.
Empower ourselves within that system. It's the best.
If there's enough of us, right? We've been talking about this for ages, right? Empower, if you heal yourself, you heal the group, right? But now we can gain some momentum. And there was a Capricorn woman, Pam Crocker, very, very famous Capricorn woman. The name fades me, but she said, well, with the dawning of the internet, it's quite interesting though, because it's still in its teens. It holds the potential for world revolution. Yeah. To a certain degree, of course. You can't get Facebook in China, for instance, right? But news get around. Consciousness spreads like fire these days. It's like the wildfire of the planet, and it can't be stopped.
We want a Bitcoin of Facebook. Bitcoin version of Facebook. Well, is that social media being set up, untraceable what is that called? The links,
the something. I know what you mean. Yeah. You know.
Social media going along those lines, because, you know, as we know, and what Facebook might take this down is, you know, they just want you to pay for getting out there now on Facebook. It's all about big, huge corporation it is. So, you know, if we're not around Facebook as much, guys, it's because we're kind of, you know, moving on to other things. So keep on track, you know. So, gosh, there's so much to talk about it into, like, again, bringing it, all of what we've just been talking about brings up that 2020 huge conglomeration in Capricorn, and the better system that we're, in a sense, wanting to see, you know, there's parts of it there, isn't there? Like with the communities, what we're involved with, all of that thing, but there's just so much more. We're just at the start of it. Like you said, the internet's a baby, you know?
Yeah, and we have to remember that these great revolutions, they didn't come until Pluto. Well, if you look back in history, you know, the United States history, you know, it's written when Pluto was in 1776. It was written when Pluto was around, I think, 27 or 24 degrees Capricorn, and right after it went into, well, not right after, you know, it's Pluto, but it went into Aquarius, and then you had revolutions going crazy all across the planet, right? So that's when it started to really emerge, this, what is Aquarius as opposed to Capricorn? Well, it's that brotherhood, it's all these the human rights, and anything that is related to human rights has been the intention of any revolution. It's to protect and make conscious what are the human rights. Huh? We are human beings. We're not objects. We're not a number. We are human beings. We deserve a dignified life, a life of respect. So we're not here to excuse ourselves. I'm sorry for being bored. I'm sorry that I'm polluting so much just by being here, which is the kind of guilt that they're trying to get us to buy, right? That's not the problem. It's how it's been distributed on, you know, like, here, look at me. I'm like a proper revolutionist. I'm like, viva la revolution.
Plenty for all, they say, isn't it? It's just the way that it's managed, and scarcity is dealt with. And, you know, so many things still to go. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Big topic.
Yeah, we are patient. You know, we are waiting for it.
Plod along. Well, I mean, thank God we've got astrology to help us kind of understand the times, from our own personal kind of developments and what we go through, you know, on a monthly basis or what have you, to the bigger cycles that people like Kaypacha, Sol, you know, other amazing astrologers around the world help us keep in touch with. So I think we'll kind of wrap it up, because we could, again, go on, but there's Sunday to finish for you. And a Monday to go to bed.
Yeah, it is Monday. I have to go to bed now.
So before we go, though, talking about how, you know, important astrology is, and again, these kind of webinars or the free things that we all do are just to kind of encourage you to learn more, to find out more, to have your chart, to follow the Venus retrogrades, to have a look what Jupiter in Sagittarius is going to do, and get intentionally minded with what's going on for you, because all of us, we're all kind of teaching, and Sol and myself are also part of Kaypacha's amazing dream team, who are putting together a course, an evolutionary astrology course.
Yes.
And that is going to start for Jupiter in Sagittarius, because it's been asked for a while, hasn't it? You know, you've got a big community, and, you know, people have been asking for that type of course, because to study astrology in sound bites, as we call it, like bits and pieces, with all, you know, so much out there that never used to be. Uranus in Aries, like, how do you group that to make some kind of sense about it? I would highly recommend, you know, joining a community, CIA, NPA, doing a course. You know, if you're into it, you want to know it well, and you want to get a good grounding. So, Kaypacha, tell us a little bit about the course that we're kind of putting together there?
Yes, we are putting together the complete course for chart interpretation. And it's going to consist of 4 different modules all through 2019, the whole time Jupiter is in Sagittarius. And really, to me, and I just wanted to throw it out there a little bit, there's a lot of astrology. It's all over the place. It's somewhat disjointed or disconnected, or you need to know, you need to know a whole bunch before you can really just simply gain from, so much of what is available on the internet, or the phone and the different apps and things like that. So this is really starting with the fundamentals, but even more than that, I really feel like it is the approach that new paradigm astrology has, that evolutionary astrology has, is not about prediction. It's not about events. It is about meaning. And it is about looking at your personal soul journey and how to see in your chart, the best way of moving forward in your expansion of consciousness, which to me is opening the heart. And this is what I wanted to say, about this Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, and this, this whole, to me, what I feel is really a possibility coming for Aquarius is this, there's been a deep dive, into materialism, that we have been seeking, whether it's physical pleasure or money or conquering other nations or being famous, but there has just been this superficial, attempt, immature attempt to use, the material science and material world for our fulfillment. And, astrology and evolutionary astrology and our charts and yoga and meditation, and there are so many different tools available to us now. And we would like to use these tools to open the doors of perception that bring us a sense of inner peace, serenity, and fulfillment that don't require damaging, hurting, abusing, or manipulating others or the material world, so that we merge together spirit and matter in a harmonious, beautiful way. And I think that the philosophy behind, the belief system behind the astrologer and behind the astrology is very important when choosing a teacher or a school or a course. It's really, what is the underlying intention? And I'd like to say that this course is about self-knowledge, which is self-empowerment, and that brings hopefully more love and an opening of your heart space.
Definitely. Thank you, Kaypacha. Yeah, I mean, I so agree, because how much astrology has helped us understand ourselves first, and then we begin to understand the world. Might be kind of different for some people. Kind of, I know that it attracted to the CIA is kind of reporting on the moving, as you do as well, Kaypacha, sorry, in your Pele reports, what's going on week to week, month to month, day to day. And seeing it happening out there in the world. And then imagine, like when you're doing it to yourself, like you're seeing all those nuances and movements and moon and Venus and Mercury, and go, wow. And aha moments just constantly kind of revealing themselves with astrological work. So anyway, have a look at that. That will be announced this week. Yes, Kaypacha? Well, we'll also kind of let you know. But there's a few things I want to just kind of tell you about with the CIA, and I hope this one works. Is that backwards? Yes.
No.
No, it's the right way. It's the right way. Yeah.
It's so confusing.
Perfect.
It's the other way. Oh my God. Anyway, it's a bit under there. But next weekend, there's 4 agents getting together. Ariel Gutman, Adam Gainsbourg, Gemini Brett, and myself. We've been following and working with the Venus star and Venus phases for a few years now, and doing the webinars together. Adam Gainsbourg's just joining us for the first time, but we've learned so much from each other. So we're calling it a masterclass. So perhaps, you know, a kind of intermediate level of astrology, but if you're new, that will still work. And, you know, really kind of getting into understanding the Venus cycle very well, and particularly about the next cycle. That's a webinar we've got coming up next Monday, my Monday morning, Sunday in the US. And just a reminder, the CIA has a wonderful retreat for anyone that's up in the Ukai area, Byron Bay area. If you get in touch, I'll put it in the, I don't know, the Facebook thread. If you get in touch to come for this weekend, you get a free membership with the CIA. So that's a real bonus. And the membership of the CIA is $20 a month. And you can join as a Sunny member, Gold member, or a monthly Moon member. So keep that in mind as well, because we have 2 amazing webinars a month with a huge array of incredible agents like these 2, Agent 50 and Agent 32, which are all disguised as Agent 50 today. I don't know how that happened, but anyway, it's interesting. So anyway, keep in mind, everyone, all of that. And I just want to thank you 2 wonderful people for being here with me today, and everyone that was online on Facebook. The Facebook didn't go live. I had to stop it and start it again. So there is a bit of a cutoff at some point. I'll try and put the whole thing together. But anyway, again, thank you, Sol, for being here.
Yeah, well,
it was great for being up at midnight or after midnight. How do you do it?
I'm going backwards in time. I have Benjamin Button syndrome. It's Capricorn ascendant.
Fabulous. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's the way. Some lessons on that. And 50, thank you as well. Have a great rest of the Sunday, and we will all talk soon. And everyone out there, enjoy the next 3 months. Be prepared. It is a kind of very interesting end of the year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks, thanks so much for having us, hosting us, and doing all your work, Jules.
Yeah, Jules.
Well, I'll get this right next time. Now I know I have to see it backwards on there. It's really, like last night when I was doing it, I'm going, yeah, that makes sense. But I wasn't. It was just on this little screen here. So anyway.
Well, I'm full of awe.
Said during the thing, Kaypacha, it's like an agent with new toys. Yeah, I'm always into the new toys somehow, because what you find is people doing the same thing. It's like, you know, I want to do something else now. So anyway, thanks, guys. Happy Equinox.
Thank everybody who showed up today. It's just all of us showing up and expanding and growing and loving that's going to make the change. So thank you for.
And we can do more of that together. So keep together, everyone, and good to be connected. See you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.